Hi, loves. I hope you are having a fantastic day so far. Today, I wanted to hop on and just talk for a moment about our tendency to absorb the emotions of those around us. So, it probably happens pretty often that you find yourself in the presence of someone. This especially happens with people that we love. You find yourself around someone who is experiencing deep stress, deep anger, sadness, fear. They're experiencing a really strong negative emotion. And oftentimes we want to be there for that person. We want to be empathetic. We want to be supportive. And what we find happens is that because of us wanting to be supportive, we have a tendency to actually absorb that other person's emotional state. That we actually, once we've spent some time with someone who's feeling fear, anger, sadness, stress, that we suddenly start to feel fear, anger, sadness, stress, just from being around them. So we will never have control over anything external. We can't control outside circumstances. We can't control people, but we do have full control over ourselves. And that means we have full control over our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions. So whether you're around someone who's feeling a negative emotion or you just find yourself feeling a negative emotion, you always have the choice to change that. So you may not be able to change the circumstance that triggered an emotion within you, but you have full control over whether or not you decide to stay in that negative emotion or instead choose a more positive state. So when you find yourself with this person who's experiencing a strong negative emotion, especially for empathetic, like really naturally empathetic people, you feel like you need to know exactly how they're feeling to be able to support them. But that just isn't true. You're never going to be able to feel exactly what they're feeling because you're never going to be them in that exact moment. But you know, because you are a human, you know what fear feels like. You know what sadness feels like. You know what anger feels like. You have the capacity to stay in a positive emotional state while also supporting someone who is in a deep, deep negative emotion. You do not have to absorb their emotional state to properly support them. Now, what happens a lot of times is we'll find that we're trying to stay in a positive emotional state and we're trying to be, really supportive of this person. And all of a sudden we do start to absorb it. Like it almost happens kind of subconsciously. You don't even realize it. And all of a sudden, as you're trying to be supportive and loving, you start to feel stress. You start to feel anger. You start to feel sadness. And what we oftentimes do is we layer another negative emotion on top of that negative emotion. So we feel bad about feeling bad, or we feel guilty about feeling sad. We make ourselves feel bad about experiencing a negative emotion. And I think one of the biggest acts of self-love we can possibly give ourselves is to not feel bad about feeling bad. Because even the best intentioned person is going to slip in to negativity, is going to slip in to these more negative emotional states. It's just part of being human. It's part of the beauty of being human. But just because you find yourself slipping into sadness, into stress, into anger, doesn't mean you need to layer guilt or more anger or more sadness or anything on top of it. One of the greatest acts of self-love we can give ourselves is just to not feel bad about feeling bad, but just to let ourselves feel it and remember that we have the power to reach for a different emotional state. So that even once you kind of catch yourself, right? If you catch yourself all of a sudden, oh my goodness, I'm absorbing their stress. I'm starting to feel stress. If you realize that starting to happen, you can just take a moment and pause and remind yourself that you have the choice to reach for a different emotional state. You don't have to stay in that emotion. So when it comes to this idea of how we have a tendency to absorb the negative emotions of those around us, I really do believe this comes from just a really empathetic human space of wanting to support those around us. But emotions are contagious. Energy is contagious. And if we're constantly absorbing everything that's around us, it is just going to cause chaos in our life, in our emotional state. It's just going to cause complete internal chaos. So the first step to kind of shifting this is just awareness, of just becoming aware of your emotions more regularly, and especially heightening that awareness when you are with someone who's experiencing a negative emotional state of being. So when you're with someone that's in that stress, anger, fear, sadness, just heighten your awareness and check in with yourself regularly. Okay, how am I feeling? Most of us, negative emotions, we kind of feel them within our body. For me, I feel stress in my chest, in my throat. A lot of times I feel anger in my stomach, in my neck, in my back. We feel our emotions. We don't just kind of think our emotions. So just heighten that awareness of how am I feeling? How is my body feeling? And when you notice yourself kind of slipping into a negative state, all you need to remind yourself is that you have the power to shift that state. You can always reach for a different emotional state. You cannot change how the person around you is feeling. You can't pull them out of sadness. You can't pull them out of fear. They have to pull themselves out. But that doesn't mean that you have to absorb that emotional state and go down with them. You can stay in a positive emotional state while also being supportive and empathetic.